Welcome back, Steelers fans, after a rare victory of all things. I am your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the Message Boards, joined by my stalwart cohort, Corey Karbowski. You know him as Corey. Corey, how are we doing this evening?
Oh, great. We all said it. Steelers win this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's been a while, whether it's been on this podcast or podcast past, where we've all predicted a Steelers victory in the same week. So good to know that we finally got one right, because if you look at our other picks last week, good Lord, we missed on a bunch. So, at least we got our 5-star matchup right. Well, with that being said, let's dive right in. There were a lot of things to like about this past game, and I think the first and obvious, the biggest headline, TJ Watt is back, looked very good, didn't look like he missed a step. Corey, tell us a little bit about Watt's performance. Just great to see him back in the lineup and what he did for this defense as a whole.
Oh, it was elite. And it's remarkable how we go from what looks like a consistent bottom 5 defense in the NFL with him out and a top 5 defense when he's in. And granted, the Saints aren't this offensive juggernaut, but the difference when he's on and off the field is incredible. It's not even like it was some bum right tackle he was going against. Ryan Ramczyk's a good ball player. Like he came back after a however long hiatus. What was it? 8 weeks, 8-week hiatus, and
weeks.
Came and whooped up on a good football player.
Yeah, he had a little bit of previous knowledge, and you kind of forget about it back in the day. But Ramczyk ended up coming out in that exact same draft class. As you know, they're both out of Wisconsin. So there was even some talk about him kind of knowing Ramczyk a little bit, knowing how he liked to, I think it was punch with his inside hand throughout the game. He kept taking advantage of that. So I found that to be quite a humorous storyline throughout the game, because Watt was definitely getting the better of his former college teammate. But I think the unsung hero, the guy that we got late in the offseason, who really had a great training camp, and we lost him before the start of week 1, DeMonte KZ. Boy, we need a guy like that on the field, especially with a Fitzpatrick going out suddenly with that appendectomy. Got to really like what KZ brought to the field this past Sunday. He was all over the field, but the thing I like the most is he brought the attitude with him.
Yep.
And well, we've kind of been missing that on our defense. And to get 2 guys like that back, like Watt, that sets the tone. KZ, a newcomer for this team. This is his first game action as a Pittsburgh Steeler. He set the tone too. So it's nice to see a guy like KZ, who no one really thought much of at the time, come in and look very good, especially just kind of given Fitzpatrick's injury. It'll be curious to see. I know there's optimism that he might play this week against Cincinnati. It might be a little soon. The guy did just have appendectomy surgery. But yeah, it was great to see KZ out there too. After what seems like we always have injuries to our secondary. So very nice to see him fill in. Really, the secondary in general played very well. I know it isn't like we were going up against elite wide receivers or anything, but Levi Wallace actually had a very nice pick. So it's just nice to see that unit kind of bounce back after getting totally thrashed by the Philadelphia Eagles 2 weeks prior. So, Corey, one other thing I think we need to talk about in this game more than anything is, did the Steelers finally find a running game?
Oh my God, it was incredible. And it's what Jaylen Warren carries. I mean, he's just got a certain pop behind him. But I think the big thing was, Najee looked like a solid running back. It's not the average. I mean, he averaged 5 yards to carry, which is, huge increase. I think he was at 3.4 on the season. I think just pulling that number out. Yeah. But it's really nice to see. And you would think it would make it easier on pick, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But we averaged 5 yards a carry as a team, 2 touchdowns. We had 2 or 3 big runs. And the New Orleans defensive front 7, it's not a slouch. Like they've got a few guys there: Pete Werner, Davenport, Cam Jordan. They've got interior guys that aren't bad in the run game. It was just nice to see. And even a little bit more creativity in the offense too. I'm not going to come out and sing the praises for Matt Canada, but it was a little bit more creative than we usually see.
Yeah, for all of you that had, a bet placed on a George Pickens rushing touchdown, I hope you all cashed in big this week. That's almost like predictable, though. Oh, let's, we get rid of Chase Claypool, who's run it in a few times this year. Screw it. Let's give it to Pickens, see if he can do it. So just like, it just seemed like we would do that. I'm not criticizing because I like the creativity or whatever. But it isn't like we haven't seen a wide receiver run a score in this year or something. But now we just chose to do it with a different one. So, but yeah, just in general, boy, it was nice to see Najee look like the back we drafted him to be. A guy who stopped trying to make a home run hit every single time, he carried the ball. He did a nice job being patient. Really showing his power this game. He really made it tough for people to bring him down, which resulted in a few nice big runs. I mean, I think one was the biggest run of the season, and I'm going for like 44 yards up the left side of the field. Just nice to finally see that. And it was a good decisive run too. He saw the hole, he took it, he broke the tackle, ended up going off for like another 20 yards. So boy, if he and Jaylen Warren with his first step can get going, that will do wonders for this offense. Because when this offense can't run the ball, we all know this offense is pretty damn predictable as is, but it gets even more predictable when we can't run the ball. So, but more than anything, that helps Kenny. Like you said, that helps Kenny Pickett. It takes the pressure off him to always make a game-winning throw, which it seemed like we had kind of been in that mode recently. It's like, oh, we're going to keep it close. Hopefully we get some chances to score. Kenny might have to do it for us, but you got to really love it. Mentioning that Najee run real quick, did anyone else see that clip where Kenny Pickett's hard charging down the field to try to pick up a block? I didn't see, watching the game live, I didn't really see that. But then, seeing Twitter blow up with, does anyone see Kenny Pickett race to try to get a block? You got to like that out of a young quarterback or whatever. But at the same time, he's got to watch it too, because that's where guys tend to take the cheap shots.
Yeah.
But just in general, what did you kind of think of, Pickett's performance last week? I just feel like it was adequate, but it wasn't great. It wasn't even good, if you ask me. I don't know.
I personally, I feel like that was his worst performance so far, at least development wise, because the things where you'd hope he'd start to improve on now are where he's kind of fallen off the rails a bit. So, I mean, I'm looking at this right here. He took 6 sacks that game. I would say 3 of them, and I think maybe a 4th, were 100% on him. And there's something to be said about maybe the first read didn't get open. Like there's coverage sacks, but more often than not for me, what I see him doing is him bailing out the back of the pocket, which is not what you want your 24-year-old rookie quarterback to be doing. It'd be different, I feel, if he was 21, because then you're like, he's young, he has time. The issue with him bailing out the back of the pocket is because it creates horrible habits. You see it with Mahomes, and Mahomes is a little bit more elusive than he is. He can really drive the ball downfield even when he's falling backwards. With Kenny, when he bails backwards, he gets caught to where he's looking, then he tries to duck it under. The pocket presence is really worrying for me, actually. The overall inaccuracies I can write off. The footwork will improve. His arm strength is solid. It's not crazy. And he does have some bite to him. He's got that attitude still. But if he keeps bailing on the pocket how he has been, that scrambling ability of him does nothing, because he's not going to outrun DNs running up the field. So this was a very worrying game for me. And if this keeps up, I think there's going to be a question about if he's the guy in the offseason, because that's critical. And that's kind of just mental. Like, that's not even something that can really be addressed. He knows the technique for it.
Right. So obviously, he's a rookie. Obviously, he's still got to build on his fundamentals. He's got to get more up to speed from a mental standpoint. It just kind of feels like we've seen what we're going to see out of Kenny this year. Like kind of what you said. It feels like he's kind of reached a plateau of what we can expect from him this year. I just don't expect like a huge incremental, increase in his playing ability this year. I think we've seen what he can do, and we're gonna just have to try to win games with what he's able to do. Part of it is, players have to make plays, guys have to get open and such. But like you said, 3 or 4 of those sacks are on him. He's just got to know when to, get rid of the ball, check down, just get rid of it, period. So,
And just to kind of tack onto that, I'm sure with a good OC, he would look a lot better than he does right now, because I think our offense it wouldn't be good for Tom Brady. It wouldn't be good for Lamar Jackson. Like there's no scenario where this offense would be a good offense in the NFL. So that's still something to consider. And I don't want to just, I don't want it to seem like it's just blaming Kenny for the offense struggling. I mean, we scored 20 this game, but just overall, since he's taken over, it's not all Kenny, but that doesn't mean that there are factors that Kenny contributes to that are not related with the offensive play calling and the offensive structure. Like I said, the pocket presence. I mean, the first play of the game, that wide open miss to Deontay Johnson, it's really a throw that you cannot miss, especially throwing it behind. Because, I mean, he's been the king of tipped interceptions, but throws like that are how the ball pops up. So kind of fortunate there wasn't a safety breaking down on that was trailing behind a little, where he could have maybe got behind it. But there's still, you can blame, you can still hold Kenny accountable for his mistakes and his shortcomings, because there have been plenty, while also taking into account that the O-line has been okay at best, sometimes maybe solid-ish, but never good, and that the offensive coordinator's a clown. But that still doesn't mean that Kenny's off the hook for what he does. And even if he's just a rookie, you'd hope to see a little more out of him. I think everyone would agree with that.
Well, Corey, I think you sent a record. I think that's the latest in a podcast where we haven't brought up that our offensive line is deficient and that our offensive coordinator doesn't belong in Pittsburgh. So thank you for bringing up a personal record about how late in the show we get to how bad that combination is.
That's usually number one on the list. So
I know, right? So nice to change it up here and there. But yeah, so it's just, yeah, I guess the biggest thing I want to say about Kenny is I still think he can be the guy, but there's definitely a lot of factors right now where, we're going to give him at least another year, because I don't think Pittsburgh's going to be in a position to draft another quarterback in round 1. If we do, it means we've completely given up on him. And I just don't sense, Pittsburgh to do that. We'll at least give him one more year at the starting helm, a full offseason to get ready, a whole training camp, get on the same page as his receivers, get all the number 1 reps in training camp to be really ready for an NFL season, not just get thrown in kind of like he did.
Yeah.
So,
Did you happen to see the comment by Ben? I think it was on his podcast, maybe today. He was making a little crack about how if the Steelers did what I said to do and start Kenny Pickett week 10, he'd be 1-0 right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, you have to get the sense, that might have been the plan at one point. With just how bad we started out, you could just tell Trubisky wasn't even going to keep us competitive for some games. So I don't know, but yeah, leave it to Big Ben, to say, oh, I was right about something. He likes to do that a lot. Not saying that he's not wrong some of those times, but it was nice to see Big Ben there to honor Heath Miller at halftime, who got inducted into the Ring of Honor, Hall of Honor. I'm not sure what the Steelers call it, but talk about a tight end who did everything for Pittsburgh, laid his heart on the line. I hope he's enjoying retirement, because we still miss him. Even though Freiermuth is, I feel, can be good, Heath Millers are a rare find. So I hope he's doing well.
Did you Did you happen to see the Ben story about Heath too? And it feels like we're just retelling Ben's podcast at this point, but this was a really funny clip. So he used to, so they said Heath would go weeks without dropping a pass in practice. And, Ben would give him like maybe a bad ball and it would hit Heath's fingertips or something. And everyone would be like, oh, like everyone get quiet, like, oh my God, like Heath dropped the pass. And so Heath would come back to the hole. He'd be like, oh, sorry, Ben, won't happen again. Like, oh, and just like, my bad. He's like, Heath, I barely hit your hands. He's like, nope, unacceptable. That's just every time.
That's Heath Miller, all right, playing the role of good soldier. It's never my quarterback's fault. It's always on me. But yeah, so not nice little victory, and it also nice to point out just the defense played a very nice game overall too. So they were pretty good. I mean, they held Kamara very much in check. So that was nice to see. They didn't give up any deep balls. We've mentioned, KZ and Levi Wallace both played good games, but just in general, they did not give up the explosive plays that this defense seems like has been doomed to give up, this season.
One thing that was a little intriguing for me, at least, was Miles Jack. I'm not sure. Was Miles Jack in uniform? Because I know that he was active, but I'm not sure if he was, or I know that he was like taken off the injury report, because I'm not sure Miles Jack played a snap, but I thought that he was coming back healthy.
If that is the case, I missed it as well. Will, just kind of last second here, did you happen to see if Miles Jack played this weekend?
No, I don't think he did. And it was like there was a reference to it in the post-game presser. I'm going to look right now and tell you 100% confirm that. But yeah, something happened and I don't know what it was. I'll look it up while we're online since I seem to be in position to do that right now. How are you fellas doing?
Doing good, Will. How are you?
I was just running through the rain for like a mile, which is a thing you do in New York City, and it seems totally normal. And when you live anywhere else, you're like, why would anybody do that? I don't understand.
Oh yeah, Jeremy, you were upset when it was 90. It's been 40 degrees, and I've been freezing my ass off this whole week.
Well, it got very cold in Indiana here too. I think you were on Friday. I think it's supposed to be down to 26 here. So yeah. Winter is rearing its ugly head up here in Indianapolis in the Midwest.
It gets to 40 and I'm throwing a fit here. So
yeah, it appears Miles Jack did not get any snaps in the game, so that is confirmed. Which is weird because only Spillane and Devin Bush got snaps at linebacker. They didn't rotate anybody else in.
That's what I thought.
Interesting.
But let's see. Miles Jack Saints. Let's see what it says. So have we crowned Kenny Pickett the great young hope? No.
Not exactly.
After this week,
you'd be a fan of. I probably talked longer than I ever have on this podcast, like 3 straight times about Kenny Pickett. Will.
Wow, I missed it. I figured, he had sort of like, I guess you would call that, a better performance than some of his performances. And I was sort of waiting for, a performance where he, wasn't his worst of all time before I start throwing out some comparison stats. But I've been keeping track of the last 6 quarterbacks who were rookies starting in the league. And then the next wave before that includes some bigger names like Josh Allen and Mahomes and not Mahomes. Josh Allen started as a rookie and Deshaun Watson, et cetera. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty. Even amongst the probably the worst guy in all that is Josh Rosen, and it's neck and neck. They're mostly Kenny Pickett comes up at the bottom, and there's maybe 2 stats where Rosen is worse, but otherwise it's like. The offense certainly is doing him no favors, but yeah, statistically wise, it's been pretty ugly. And I think it's sort of covered up a little bit on Sunday by the fact that they won and that their secondary in particular played really well. And the officiating kind of kept some of their mistakes from being more obvious on offense.
So, Will, I actually thought that in like a development point of view, this was his worst game. And I'm curious to see what you think of that because I was really upset, I would say, with how he handled the pocket. And I mean, he does other things well, like, hustling down on the run play. And, he's still got that grip. But in terms of developing as a rookie, I was very upset with how he managed the pocket.
Yeah, kind of, like this is what a lot of rookies do. And I think that's the natural instinct is, in the pocket is where trouble happens. So I got to get the hell out of here if it's been more than a, second and a half. And so, he was trying to escape outside. And, for a guy like Pickett, once he gets outside the pocket there, unless there's something just absolutely obvious available to him, that's going to be a throwaway or a sack, So yeah, I think that's the training is that you got to stand in there and or step up and or get rid of the ball from the pocket. And I think we overrate, we had a quarterback that wasn't moving very well the last couple of years. So we tend to overrate this idea of, being able to get out of the pocket and extend plays and so on. But it's not really, it's not as easy as that. It's not as easy as just getting out of the pocket and suddenly there'll be plays available. Right. So I don't know. To me, it's like, I thought he made a beautiful touch throw on the deep ball. And he threw a slant. I mean, the slants were a nice addition because he does that well, even in a tight window. But yeah, the intermediate game right now, he is just either psyched out about his ability to, his arm to be able to make those throws, or he's psyched out about the windows too tight or something, because those have become really, really tentative and hesitant looking throws or throws that don't look good. And then when he tries to really put mustard on the ball and throw it more than 10 yards downfield, it feels like the ball comes out funny. It takes a curve. It sails on, etc. I think it's from overthrowing the ball, right?
Yeah, I'd agree. I will say the one positive thing from Kenny Pickett this week, no turnover on his behalf, no interceptions thrown, no fumbles. So, take it with a grain of salt, but at least he took care of the ball this week for the most part, even though, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure the Saints dropped a very obvious, what should have been a pick ball to the left side of the field.
They did. I mean, I guess I'd say, in a game where when your defense is playing against a team coming off of a short week, you're on a bye, and they're a little bit shorthanded. And I just felt like that game was just, the Saints had every excuse to lose that game. And they kind of played pretty lackluster, especially on the offensive side. So, in that kind of environment with your defense, maybe it was better that he didn't take any chances with the ball, and it didn't need to be any better than that. They were able to run it a little bit. He was able to run it. That's probably the other really positive thing he did, was after those early, feeling the need to escape the pocket to the sidelines. A couple times later in the game, as the game progressed, he stepped up in the pocket, and that was a big part of the success that they did have. I just don't know that really, the idea that these drives are going to get sustained by dumb defensive penalties and that you're going to play a tired team, that it allows you to run on them a little bit and so on. Like I would like to think that this is progress, but I'm not sure how sustainable that really is to turning it into points, because, there were not a lot of points to be had even in this experience where it felt like if you just went by the feel of the game, it felt like they dominated the Saints.
Yeah, very true. Definitely had a feel of, this was more of a 28-10 ball game, not a 20-10 ball game. I feel like Steelers definitely probably, let up, could have probably scored one more time in this game, and that might have painted a more accurate picture of how this game went. But with that being said, there is another game this week. The Bengals come to town. Luckily, Jamar Chase is still on IR, so we won't have to play him, which is always nice. The bad news is the Bengals have finally realized they need to turn to Joe Mixon a little bit more and let that guy play some football. So let's get into our matchups. I'm going to start us off kind of along that lines. I mean, the Bengals have turned to Joe Mixon, and it has resulted in winning football. They're not asking Joe Burrow to drop back 55 times a game like they did to start out the year. And that only resulted in, a 5-touchdown performance from Joe Mixon against Carolina. not this past week because they were on bye, but the week prior. So, that they have found some success here turning to the running game. It just alleviates pressure off Joe Burrow in the passing game when obviously they're down their best offensive weapon. So I think Joe Mixon versus our inside guys, Bush, Spillane, and hopefully Mac. Hopefully that's not, an injury that will keep him out, for a period.
Miles Jack, by the way, it was just a continuation of his knee injury. They held him out. He dressed, and they held him out as a precaution because they didn't need him. So
okay,
that's what that was.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, that gives me some optimism that he'll be there then. But I mean, the key thing for these guys is make sure you form tackle and you get this guy on the ground because he is a guy that is not easy to tackle. You cannot allow Joe Mixon to stay on his feet and churn for extra yards. That has been something that has absolutely killed our defense this year. Just from aside games where we've had poor tackling performances, it just doesn't seem like we're bringing pop on our tackles this year. So the biggest thing, get that guy down, get him down early. Do not let him get momentum because he is a guy that will drag you. Even chipped in the passing game too. So he's playing a complete football game right now. So we've got to be aware for that. Corey, what's another matchup you think we should be on the lookout for this weekend?
I'm going to go our entire O-line versus their front seven because this isn't going to be a game that we're going to be able to win throwing the ball. We're going to have to be able to run the ball at least like we did against the Saints. And let's get this out in the air. We ran the ball good against the Saints. If you look at like good rushing performances this year across the NFL, that's nothing. Like there's teams that do that every single week. So even though that's good for the Steelers, that's still by no means like a dominant rushing performance. But I think we're going to have to do at least that if we want to win this game against the Bengals. I mean, this is going to be a game where you want to keep their offense off the field still. You want to make life easy on Kenny Pickett, and none of that's going to happen if the O-line can't climb to backers, which is, if I remember, my number one complaint about week one is that there was no movement to the second level by the O-line. They did fine enough on the front line, but I mean, when you don't have a 4-3 or a 4-4 running back in the backfield, which, not everyone does have, but if you don't have those guys, they're not going to be able to make something out of linebackers running through open gaps. So the O-line's going to have to be able to climb up to the second level, get hats on Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt, and allow the running backs to at least have some room to get 4 or 5 yards carry at least, hopefully 6 or 7, but I don't want to ask for too much.
Yeah, you bring up our offensive line against their defensive line. I do think it's good to note. I did read this earlier today that Cincinnati's defensive tackle DJ Reader was cleared for full practice on Monday. However, I read that they are optimistic he will play, which in coach speak means, well, we'd sure like him to be out there on Sunday, but it's not very realistic. Just tell you how many times I've heard the term optimistic someone will play, and it never comes to fruition. So, I mean,
something about
we'll see.
Something about Reader real quick. He's one of the most underrated tackles in the NFL. His name never comes up when you're talking about the elite guys. I think he's at minimum a top 7 guy. He's a real freak with how he can anchor down. I mean, did you guys see the clip from week 1 where he had one leg that kind of like anchored off a double team? It was ridiculous. It probably didn't go too viral, but I lurked Twitter. But that's just one thing I wanted to note. That dude, if he's playing, is a huge upgrade from what else they have.
Yeah, I mean, we could not run the ball week 1. I mean, that week 1, obviously, it was Trubisky at quarterback, but I mean, good Lord, we couldn't run anything that day. So it'll be interesting to see if we can't kind of, take advantage of the momentum of this past game against the Saints. Maybe a good game from the offensive line gives them some confidence to go out there and do it against someone else. We haven't had too many days where we felt like the offensive line really played their tails off and got results. So hopefully that'll, build on itself. Will, what do you think is another matchup we should be?
Well, just a quick comment on what Corey said.
Absolutely.
The Steelers offensive line, needing to get to the second level. That's especially important against the Bengals because that's the strength of their defense, right? Those linebackers, they have a really nice set of linebackers. I mean, Logan Wilson is the guy that gets a lot of attention. I think is a terrific player. Jermaine Pratt's solid, he's a solid downhill player. But Akeem Davis-Gaither, another cat. They got linebackers who will make plays if they're clean, right? So it is an important matchup. I'm going to go to the other side though. I'll say the Bengals offensive line against the Steelers front. The Bengals are funny. They're like fifth in the DVOA in running the ball, and they are 12th in passing, but 28th in pass protection. So what that tells me is that their quarterback bails them out a lot of plays where there's pressure and there's stuff going on. And that probably has something to do with, well, when I get in trouble, I'll throw it to Jamar Chase. But wait, Jamar Chase isn't there right now. They do have other guys. I mean, they're receiving core and dumping it off to Joe Mixon. All of that stuff can work for them. But to me, I felt like the Steelers generated quite a bit of pressure against the Saints. And if they can take advantage of Cincinnati's line in the pass game, they might have some luck with that. But in order to do that, they're going to have to stop them from, bits and bytes running the ball down the field. And the Bengals, especially center to the right side, are very good running the football. So I expect to see, them try to go after the, Ogunjobi has played well, but he's a penetrating guy. I think you can, the certain kind of blocking scheme, you would have a chance to take advantage of him a little bit. So wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals either try to run up the middle or run, more to the right than they do running towards Cam Hayward. I think they'd rather have him chasing and rather go at TJ Watt than have him chasing the backside because both those guys are relentless. So I think there'd be more a question of try to take it to the Steelers and, be nice to try to put some points on the board so the Bengals have to rely a little bit more on the passing game and can't just run it because I think that would be a better scenario for the Steelers with their pass rush.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. I mean, this is a front seven unit that when they were fully healthy in week one, got after Joe Burrow. I think it was 7 times, 7 sacks in that game. Alex Highsmith with 3 of those, Watt out there, collection of other guys got a few. Not much has changed since then as far as the pass protection. They're a better run blocking unit as of this week, but and they're better, in their pass pro than they were week one. But how much better definitely remains to be seen. And that kind of brings me to our next matchup: Watt and Highsmith going up against La'el Collins and Jonah Williams. These guys need to feast if Pittsburgh's going to pull out a win, because without Jamar Chase there, they're way more reliant on not Taj Boyd. I was about to say that's not the right guy. Definitely the wrong guy. Tyler Boyd, excuse me. Tyler
Boyd and T. Higgins. That's you can make this
T. Higgins. Yeah. Well, Taj Boyd was a former Clemson quarterback that was in Pittsburgh for a little bit. So I don't know where that name came from, but that's what came to mind. But they definitely force more balls to those guys because they need those guys to make plays. And I don't feel like, the Pittsburgh secondary, even if Fitzpatrick doesn't play, I think it'd be a miracle if he played. It'd be great if he did. I think it's a real quick turnaround coming off that surgery. But even so, with KZ being back last week and playing a nice game, I think our secondary can match up with these guys. Those guys don't scare me on their own, so to say. They're both good players, don't get me wrong. But with no Jamar Chase to allow single coverage across the board, I feel like those guys can be schemed away to a degree. So it'll be interesting. I'm not sure you guys agree with me on that, but I feel like, Steelers defense has a chance to, play some shutdown football again this week if everything goes to plan.
I've seen this movie before. The Steelers, their vaunted pass rush is going up against, playing the defense is hot, vaunted pass rush going up against a team that struggled on the offensive line. And then you go out and they play that game against the Chargers where they don't get a sniff of the quarterback. And I think a lot of that is this scheme and what they're trying to do. So in week one, the Bengals quarterback was holding onto the ball they weren't all that smooth and running and what they want to do. And the offensive line obviously hadn't played a lot of of live reps in camp. I don't think that's going to be the case this week. I still think the Steelers pass rush is better and should have some success, but I predict this is a game where they only get to Joe Burrow once or twice rather than 18 times like we think they should.
Yeah, sure.
So I just feel like it's, I don't think you can count on that. Pass rush isn't that sustainable, really. It's like everything has to go right. Their plan has to be a certain thing. The matchups one-on-one have to be a certain thing, and they have to have learned nothing from the first matchup. So, that's the thing. Cincinnati, watching the film, learned a lot more than the Steelers learned about Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's one thing I do. That was kind of another quote unquote matchup I have because it's, not player v player, but I think coaching is going to be a big time factor in this game. This is, for starters, the second time these two teams are playing against each other, like we know from week one. But they're coming off a bye week where the Steelers showed a little more on offense than they have been. Will, I didn't, give Matt Canada too much credit, but he did show a little more than he usually does. They are coming off a bye week, off of a team, and they get to play a team they've already played, and they know us in general, like they whooped our ass last year. So this is going to be a big test to see if we can make the adjustments before they can, and especially coming out of halftime, which this should still be a game then, I think, if we can win the second half.
Yeah. All things to consider as we get a Bengals team that's definitely going to want to avenge that early season loss because, well, let's face it, they just didn't play well week one. I mean, shoot, McPherson alone had one of the most forgettable kicking performances this year. I don't think anyone has looked at that bad in a game this year as far as a kicking standpoint than McPherson. Getting the extra point blocked, shanking that one completely.
Yeah, but I mean, talk to the other cohort here on the show about really what was behind.
Yeah, Corey.
Because you have an expert here.
Yeah, our specialist expert.
Yeah, I mean, just when you lose your starting long snapper and the backup is snapping like a JV high schooler, not even kidding. It was things that legitimate high school snappers wouldn't be doing with the ball. And I don't expect them to snap like even like a college snapper, but I mean, it seems like someone on the staff should have known to fix some of the things that were causing the issues. And I mean, he was snapping horribly. That's what all the blocks were. Every single one of them were on the long snapper, which, unless a miracle happens, they should have their starting long snapper for the entire game. So,
yeah, what a bummer. Yeah, because mentioning specialists, Chris Boswell won't be with Pittsburgh here for a few more weeks. Got put on IR to heal that groin up. Matthew Wright certainly kind of he didn't have a great game by any means. He rather forgettable for the most part, but he was solid enough when called upon. But I mean, in a game where kicking can be the difference, you hope it doesn't come down to it. So.
Corey, you want to drop your Matthew Wright story? Now's a good time.
Oh yeah.
So I've snapped with Matthew Wright multiple times, and I like him. I like him as a guy. I didn't think that he would ever actually crack the NFL for the same issues why Skiba actually it didn't make the squad over him, and that's because of kickoffs. So Matthew Wright actually he barely hit kickoffs into beyond the end zone for the required hang time you need it for. And he improved on it. But I mean, the thing with Matthew Wright is you can kind of tell by watching, he doesn't have a crazy powerful leg, but he is going to make the kicks for the most part within 45 very consistently. But I do know this because I have snapped with him on multiple occasions, probably 3 times, I want to say. And he's laser consistent. It's just once you push him back a little deeper, especially in a windy place like Pittsburgh, you're asking a lot, and that's why he's not typically one of the first 32 for him. So, like in
right.
the NFL.
Yeah, but that's why he's made multiple stops with some few teams. But I mean, kudos to him. He's making it in the league to a degree.
I mean, he was a very consistent kicker in college, but
Right.
at what they asked him to do, I watched probably every kick that he had in the last 2 years of his career at UCF. They were one of those teams I was interested in, liked a lot of guys on that squad. So I saw him kick a lot. And yeah, very, very, he was pretty much automatic inside 40, 45 or 40. But yeah, good. The longer kicks were hard for him.
Yeah, another kicker around the league that, I'm glad he's having success, but I'll be really glad when I stop hearing Dicker the kicker out in freaking, I think he's on the Chargers right now. Good God. Can we put that to rest already? I mean, how many times
I love it.
Go back to that coin phrase? It's just getting annoying. I don't know. Pet peeve. It's like get some new material.
You'd rather talk about Harrison Butker's or what's the guy that missed the kick for Kansas City that knocked the Steelers out of the playoffs a few years ago? That guy's got a great name too for Kansas City.
Oh,
he's somewhere else now. I'll think of it anyway.
Not Cairo Santos, right?
No, it's not. Santos.
No, his game is like the kicker equivalent of Kenny Pickett being his name for quarterback.
Suck up. Josh,
yeah,
Suck up. Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Suck up.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
we'll get back on track here. Well, with that being said, there are some other, believe it or not, there are quite a few other NFL teams that play this weekend.
Can I just say before the pick segment, I got to say this. This is going to be a really hard week to pick. I found it. I put my picks in for, the two leagues that I'm in, and I had a very difficult time. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of games this weekend that definitely lend you to kind of ponder. There's not a lot of surefire picks this week, which should make this segment pretty enjoyable. Because last week I think the only game we all got there were only two games we got right was I think we all picked Tampa Bay to beat whoever they beat.
Seattle.
Yep, yeah. Thank you. I was about to say I can't remember who that was off the top of my head. And then we all managed to pick a Pittsburgh win, which definitely hasn't happened much this year. So,
well, I have to confess, I didn't pick them in my picks. I only picked them on the show.
I know. I saw that.
Because I like to get a little edge. I had cold feet about it. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, here's your bet.
I mean, I don't understand. Now they're talking about starting Jameis Winston this week. I don't know why they didn't start him last week, or even think about having him as the backup so they could bring him in off the bench or something. But man, who knows? Anyway,
yeah, I mean, we talked, as if Winston was going to start, and then didn't even play a single snap. So I don't know what's going on there. But game off the top of my head that I think is really intriguing this week, especially with how Green Bay came back and beat Dallas. I couldn't believe that happened.
Oh my God!
Just epic fashion Dallas collapse late in the game. But Tennessee is headed to Green Bay. Green Bay is favored by 3. Green Bay certainly looked like a little bit of a different team this past week. They finally got some things going. Our favorite pre-draft guy, Christian Watson, who a lot of us really liked, had his big coming out party in the league. Will, let's kick this off with you. What do you think of this game?
I actually thought that my long-term prospects for Green Bay are not necessarily that good, but I feel like Dallas on the road, Tennessee on the road I don't know what's happening with their quarterback situation, because that's
Tannehill is going to play this
week. I mean, Tennessee should win this game, but I think Green Bay will. How about that? My analysis is just that, that was a little bit of they get some energy. Green Bay will get a little bit of energy from that last week, and playing at home again against a good team. They're sort of more. I think they're more susceptible to losing to a lesser team right now than they're going to play well against a good team. Is my sense of who Green Bay is, but what do I know? I mean, I that's my best guess. I think this is a really hard one to pick.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Corey, how do you feel about this one?
At first glance, I was really talking myself into Derrick Henry walking in, because it's going to be sub 30 degrees there probably.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty
freezing across. Yeah, so I was really talking myself into the Titans have a better running game, and they can play through the cold. But then I'm like, what am I thinking? Aaron Rodgers has played in Green Bay for his entire career. Christian Watson played in North Dakota. Like, these guys are built for the cold weather. So I think having a rush advantage, which, mind you, the Packers ran the ball well last week. I think having the rush advantage really doesn't even mean that much against the Packers if they are competently throwing the ball, which, like you said, Will, I think there's going to be some energy in Lambeau. I mean, it's a primetime game. Aaron Rodgers in Lambeau, notoriously hard to beat. It's just starting to get some chemistry with his very talented rookie receiver. So I think I'm going to go Green Bay in a 7-point win. Not too high of a scoring game, but I think they get them by a touchdown.
One thing with Jeremy, you should keep in mind before you make your pick, since neither Corey or I knew this till just now. It's supposed to be very windy, exceptionally windy, actually. So bear that in mind. I mean, maybe that's a factor. I don't know.
Yeah, but very well could be. I just kind of have a feeling this game is going to be really close, but Green Bay somehow finds a way to pull one out. They did a lot of things on Sunday where they did creative things to get Christian Watson free release off the line. And when that happens, not many people are staying with Christian Watson or whatever. They did a really nice job, rubbing him free, doing some things where he could use his ability to get open. But then Green Bay ran the ball pretty well too. I think this past week was the first time I saw AJ Dillon kind of really take over the game and as a secondary back. Aaron Jones has played pretty consistently throughout the year, but this is kind of the first game where I thought, man, AJ Dillon's really pounding it out there. He was getting a lot of yards after contact and stuff like that. And then honestly, I just don't see, you mentioned the wind, where I feel like Green Bay could really cheat up and play Henry a lot because, as much as I love to tout a former Hoosier and how my boy Nick Westbrook-Akina did this past Sunday, that's not going to happen every week. So he's not going 5 for over 102 touchdowns every week. So prior to this past week, he hadn't done a whole lot this year. But I just think that kind of speaks to the overall Tennessee offense. It's meant to be a ground and pound. And if they can't do that in bad conditions, I think Green Bay is definitely suited to win there. So I'll take Green Bay to win and cover that as well. So another interesting game. Detroit on a little bit of a roll here. I think they've won 2 in a row. I can't tell you the last time Detroit's done that. But Detroit is headed to the New York Giants. The Giants are favored by 3. Corey, how do you feel about this one?
This is a tough game. And I like the attitude of both teams. I mean, Detroit had that tough sledding win against Chicago last week, and the Giants beat the Texans. The Giants are one of those kind of like, they're playing bad teams, but you still don't expect them to win a lot of the games they're winning. But I don't know. This is tough. I think I'm going to go with the Giants. It's just a gut feeling. I like the Lions more. I like watching the Lions more. And it doesn't even sound right, because if you say their defense can't hold up, you're talking about a Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and whoever they're rolling out there at receiver. I really couldn't tell you. So I'm sticking with the Giants.
It's Will Levis's favorite target. Wan'Dale Robinson.
Wan'Dale Robinson. Yep. So I think I'm going to go with the Giants just off the gut feeling. I still like a lot of the pieces on the lines more, but the Giants just keep kind of inexplicably winning, even if they're against lesser teams. I don't see much of a route for the Lions to beat them, at least, especially with the pressure that the Giants are going to put on them on the defensive end with their press man scheme and forcing Jared Goff to hit things.
All right, Will, how do you feel about this one?
This game's dead even. Take the points. I mean, those two teams are the results haven't necessarily been the same, but I think the power, like in power rankings, these two teams are identical. Like the Giants are winning games they probably shouldn't win, and Detroit is losing games they probably shouldn't lose. It's at the Giants. I know that, but I think this game's dead even. So it's at most a field goal game at the end. So take the Lions and the points.
All right. I have to say I like the Giants here a little bit more. They have a really good stout defense. It's not elite, but they do make it hard for teams to run on them. So I think the Lions might have a little bit trouble with Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift trying to get a running game going there. I think when you look at these two teams, I think you look and say which team is playing better defense. I think that's the New York Giants. It doesn't matter what Brian Dable has at his disposal. They're finding ways to move the ball. Saquon's, probably the comeback player of the NFL this year. I just like the Giants more in this one. I think Daniel Jones is a little more. I can't believe I'm about to say this, polished. And Jared Goff, not saying much, but I'm going to put it out there. So I like the Giants in the 3. Will, I'm on board with you though. I think it'll be a pretty close game throughout. So all right, let's get to probably one of the biggest matchups this week. Probably, I think this might be America's game of the week on Fox. Dallas has to go to Minnesota. Right now, Dallas is only a 1-point favorite. So I mean, that is as dead even as they come. Minnesota off the big win in Buffalo last week. People, if you want to talk about a game that'll probably go down as one of the craziest games, of the 21st century, this one's been nominated already. That the last, I think it was the last 10 minutes of this or 15 minutes of this game, if you want to include the full 10 minutes of overtime, essentially. Probably some of the weirdest shit you're ever going to see in a football game ever. It sure looked like Buffalo was going to win, then Minnesota was going to win, then Buffalo, oh God, they fumble on the goal line. But just a hell of a game. I hope you had a chance to watch it if you weren't watching Pittsburgh win. But yeah, what a game there. But Dallas has to go to Minnesota off a big win. Will, we'll start with you on this one. Like I mentioned, Dallas is a 1-point favorite.
Great matchup on the outside with Justin Jefferson and is it?
Trevon
I'm sorry.
Diggs.
Yeah, Diggs, right?
Yeah.
The other Diggs.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing about Minnesota last week was I think just Jefferson refused to let Kirk Cousins or anybody else lose that game. That catch he made, where it was like an optical illusion. Like the ball went up, the other guy reached for it with 2 hands, and when they came up, Justin Jefferson came up with the ball. It was like Houdini, man. That was nuts.
Yeah, that was an OBJ catch with people on him and still catching it one-handed. You look at the slow replay of him catching that. I mean, it's unbelievable that he controls that thing with one hand after he hits the ground and manages for the ball not to hit the ground, of all things. That, Will, like you said, just one of the best catches we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, man. I think that the key, the main reason that the Bills, beside from just luck, that they didn't win that game was that they overpressed with their, they had the advantage late in the game. All they had to do was really keep, pushing the ball towards the goal line, know that they were going to get at least a field goal and then get some shots in the end zone. And instead it got greedy. I kind of suspect that Dallas's more methodical approach might be a better way to beat Minnesota. And because they have that corner that can really match up against Jefferson and at least make it more difficult for him, I'm going to say Dallas sneaks out of there with a win.
Corey, what say you?
I'm kind of going off mood swings off this game in the sense that the Vikings won a very tough game in overtime. The Cowboys lost a very tough game in overtime. I'm not going to say like the Vikings don't wake up for this game, but I think the Cowboys are going to be practicing with a lot more on their mind this week than the Vikings necessarily will be. And we all predicted a Bills win. If Josh Allen doesn't kind of just bozo out 3 times, then the Bills win that game. And you can play the what if game all you want, but I don't think Dak will make some of the mistakes that Josh Allen did. And don't get me wrong, let's not calling Dak a better quarterback or anything, but I mean, Tony Pollard's been incredible lately. He still has CeeDee Lamb, who him and CeeDee Lamb have really came into form as of late. Their defense is a kind of a gambling defense, but I think that's what will work well against the Vikings, to where you force them to turn the ball over. So I think it's pretty close. I think I'm gonna go Dallas, though, just because I feel like you're gonna play a bit harder coming off the overtime loss and an overtime win, and I feel like they just match up well in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think we said on this podcast last week that the Vikings are the worst, 7-1 team that we had seen.
Well, they didn't look like it on Sunday, but yeah, we was
Right.
kissing.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not saying we were right, but I'm just saying, there are definitely times where we feel like, they've been more lucky than good. And eventually I think that catches up to you. They got very lucky. They got out of Buffalo with a win. At some point, luck runs out and you have to, go out there and make plays on a consistent basis. Just kind of feels like that's going to come back to haunt them at some time. I'm kind of with you guys. I feel like that's going to be this week, when they have to go up against Micah Parsons and that, Dallas defensive line. And I think it's a pride thing too for Dallas. They got embarrassed in Green Bay. Green Bay was able to put up over 200 yards on the ground in that game. And I just think that's going to be a contention point all week long of how they got pushed off the line, how, Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon were able to run the ball. And then, Rodgers obviously capitalized off the play action pass. I don't think that's going to be as available, even though I've been on the Dalvin Cook train the day he was drafted. I've loved that guy from day one. I own him in, I think, 4 of my 6 fantasy leagues this year. So while I hope he has a good day, I definitely think Dallas is going to pull out with a win on this one. I just think Dallas needs this one more off a bad loss in Green Bay. I think that's how kind of everyone sees it. It's like, oh, they blew a huge lead. I think if I remember correctly, the Cowboys got outscored 17-0 in the fourth quarter in overtime, which that's not going to happen, week in, week out or whatever. So I just see them kind of correcting that. I know Dak had some bone-headed throws that didn't and resulted in an interception. I think they cut down on the mistakes. And I think the biggest thing for Dallas to do, lean on Tony Pollard. Yep. I swear to God, lean on this kid. Everyone's been saying it, since last year, that Pollard needed to be the starting running back. He's looked great as the starting running back in 3 games. And it felt like they kind of went away from that this past game a little bit. Go back to running the football. Go back to what you were doing with Cooper Rush at quarterback and allow Dak the freedom to work off the play action off a strong running game. I think that's the recipe for success this week. So I like Dallas here. Being a 1-point favorite doesn't mean much. So covering or not covering, I think Dallas pulls out a win this week. Let's get to one more game.
Come on, man. You're going to make it Indy Philly, right?
No, man. That's not
that's my upset special of the week. Can I throw you out a number since we're not going to pick it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can.
So
pick
NFL.
It. I'm not against it. Screw it. Let's go Philly Indy. We'll give you the starting.
Listen to this stat. NFL teams coming off their first loss of the season after winning at least the first 8 are 10-9 straight up, 7-12 against the spread when they're picked as a favorite. And Indy is undefeated under Jeff Saturday, in case you hadn't heard that story.
I think it's the only story I've heard.
I don't necessarily think the Colts are going to win that game, but I will take the Colts at 7.5 all day. I might actually make that bet for real.
All right. Now, not Will. Corey, you heard him. Indy or Philadelphia right now favored by 6.5. That's what I had, made 7.5 from what Will said. So how do you think that one will go?
I said it last week. I'm going to one-up Will. I'm going to go Colts on their own, winning the game. Jeff Saturday, it's the Jeff Saturday effect. I'm sorry. They've got Matt Ryan back in there. He's playing with something that'll lose after he got benched. Yeah. Scratch the forehead, Jeremy. I know you're from Indianapolis.
You're going to hear. For you Steeler fans that aren't seeing the video behind this, I'm scratching my forehead.
Oh my God, what are these guys doing to my show? Yeah.
You're going to hear from all across the neighborhoods the praises of Jeff Saturday after this weekend. At 2-0, Matt Ryan 300-yard, 3-touchdown game. Book it.
Corey,
This
that reminds
weekend-
me. That reminds me. I was in Prague during the World Cup in '98, and it was Argentina against England. You know the way the World Cup works. Everyone in the world roots
Yes.
against England. Like doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
And when England, I actually went to bed early. I had an early morning. When England scored the goal, Argentina scored the goal to win the game in extra penalty kicks, whatever. The entire city of Prague erupted into a cheer. It was loud enough to like shake the windows, kind of. And that'll be the situation in Indianapolis when they win against Philly.
I don't know why you say this weekend. After this weekend. I'll start to hear it. I've only heard the praises of Jeff Saturday in my town here ever since they, won on Sunday against the Raiders.
You gotta run the ball down here, dude.
Yeah. All the shirts in Indy that say "run the damn ball." I will give Jeff Saturday some credit. He came in and probably managed the clock better than Mike Tomlin has in his entire career. He definitely
Low bar. That's a low bar.
Yeah, I know. Fine. But you could definitely see an improvement from the Colts in the running game, that they found a way to get that going. I don't know if they just simplified things, but you honestly, you saw some things that the old Pittsburgh Steelers used to do. You saw some guards pulling, getting out in front of guys, making some lanes open. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. It was nice to see the Colts win. It's always nice when the Colts win in this town because everyone's a grump if they don't. But I don't see that happening again. If Philly doesn't turn the ball over 4 times like they did against Washington, they end up winning that game. Hell, if it's one less turnover, they probably end up winning that game. I just don't see that happening again. And then honestly, I think Indianapolis might have turned the ball over once or twice at most this past weekend, but the Philadelphia defense is a lot better than the Las Vegas Raiders defense. I mean, good God. So, I see a superior team coming to an inferior team. I honestly would not take the Colts to cover here. I think this is going to be a game where Philadelphia is pissed off about how they let a game kind of literally fumbled their way out of a win there. So I honestly like Philadelphia to cover. I've been on Indianapolis's bandwagon as far as their defense that could keep this a close game. So I understand where you're coming from, Will. I just have a tough time taking this Indianapolis team.
Oh, dropping the logic. Hey, by the way, like places like Pittsburgh, when the Steelers lose and everybody's really grumpy afterward, whatever. You know what happens in LA if either the Chargers or the Rams lose?
I'm not sure.
They order another latte, go to the
Nothing.
beach,
Yeah, I'm not sure
Folks
they
are
know they
that's
lost. Well, let's get to one more before we get to our 5-star matchup. I feel like I got to bring this team up because they played a lot better this past week than I thought they would. Kansas City going to the Chargers. Ironically, since you brought them up, Will, why not? Let's go to a game that's happening out in LA. Kansas City favored by 6.5. Corey, what are your thoughts there?
6.5.
Yep.
Ooh. Okay, Kansas City is good, and I think the Chargers just been a little funky. They've been hit with injuries. They're not really the team we thought they were at the beginning of the year, but the 6.5 feels like a lot. I mean, they should be getting Mike Williams back and Keenan Allen back, is what I was just reading.
Oh wow!
So
that would definitely make this game more competitive.
To give 6.5 with 2 weapons returning, I mean, Herbert hasn't been pushing it down the field, but I wonder how much of that is because he's been missing his 2 weapons. I mean, even at the beginning of the year, he wasn't. But maybe this is going to be the game where he's like, F this. I've got my guys back. Let's rock and roll. We know how he lost last year. I mean, it was who did they play? It was the divisional or the wild card where they lost. I know it was a shootout.
Oh boy, that's a good question. I don't know. I think that was before the Bills. That was before the Bills game, right?
Yeah, I think so. Regardless, I think he's gonna get his guys back. I think he's gonna fire the ball out. Where's this game? In Kansas City?
No,
it's
it's
in
in Los Angeles.
So Kansas
Similar- I
City
mean,
has a
the-
home field advantage, of course.
Yeah, I was
Right.
about to say the home field advantage doesn't matter, but at least they're not traveling. I kind of want to take the Chargers here. I think him getting his weapons back might unlock the offense a little and kind of send a message that they're here, like they're making a end of the season push. I'm gonna go Chargers.
All right. Well,
Last gasp for the Chargers, I think. And if Allen and Mike Williams come back, that's a big deal. Juju Smith-Schuster is out. Hardman's
Yeah.
injured. So it's like the injury bug is slightly on the other foot maybe in this game. So if the Chargers get their receivers back, I'm taking them to win this game. I mean, as it is, they're probably still going to win, but tougher without the extra guns. If they get neither of those receivers back, then I would switch to Kansas City.
yeah. I have to say I like Kansas City here. I just think the Chiefs are a more complete team. I know Juju's out or but we had a Kadarius Toney signing finally in this offense last week. He chipped in. I think he might take on a little bit of bigger role. So I think there's a few new wrinkles that Toney can add to that offense just with his game breaking ability at times. So I know 6.5 feels like a lot, but I do think Kansas City covers here. That Chargers offensive line is still really shaky. If the Chiefs can take advantage of it, I think they could actually win this game by multiple scores. So I'll take the Chiefs here. And you know what? We're gonna have one more here because I actually meant to mention this one earlier, real quick. Kind of, I think, believe it or not, this is a battle for the top of the AFC East or close to it. We have the New York Jets headed to New England. Two teams that aren't superpowers by any means, but they're playing good football this year. And that's something to be said for in a year where there's a lot of bad football being played. So, we'll start out with you on this one. New England is favored by 3 at the moment.
The maybe Bill Belichick figures out a way to hold down a young quarterback and Zach Wilson and blah blah blah. But the Jets' defensive talent is better right now than what New England put out there on offense. And I'm on the Jets train. I feel like they're first in the division right now, and they're not going to let go of that that easily anyway. I feel like they're going to, this is going to make up for years of disaster in New England. And they can't wait to kick them a little bit while the Patriots are slightly down. But the biggest X factor in this game beyond any of that is that the Belichick's coordinators make no sense, are terrible, and are basically costing his teams win. It's almost as if they're tanking.
Canada is not New England. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Well,
sorry, wrong team.
I tell you what, Matt Patricia rivals Matt Canada, I think, as an offensive guru. So
yeah, that's saying something right there. So you have the Jets winning here. Okay. Corey, what do you think, sir?
So I'm gonna throw out a stat real quick. The Jets are 4-0 on the road.
Really?
And I think 4-0. And I think if you partner that with a narrow loss where the Wilsons kind of tore up the Patriots, I think it was a 22-17 loss, if I'm going off memory. Even if that's not the exact number, I know it's close. They narrowly lost to the Patriots last time. They get them now on the road, which they're a good road team. I mean, 4-0 is nothing to scoff at. There's some teams that are just road warriors, and the Jets are one of those teams. I think they're more talented. I think their coordinators are better. I mean, I think the only thing the Patriots really had going for them is that their defense could shut guys down, and the Wilsons already went off on them last time. So I think the Jets might actually break this one open. I think New England's favored, you said?
Yeah, they're at home, favored by 3.
yeah,
I think the Jets might get 7+ point win on them. I would take it if it was 6.5.
Gotcha. I'm kind of on the board with you guys. As much as I don't like picking the Jets, because my buddy Justice on my other podcast is a Giants Jets fan, and he lets me know every single week how well they're doing. They definitely feel like this is a game, but very much because they lost a close one last time. If Wilson plays a better game this week, doesn't turn the ball over like he did in that first matchup, they probably end up winning that game. And I feel like, that they pulled off that big win against Buffalo, went on a bye week. So it's like, one, I don't think they're coming too high off a big win. They've had a week to say, okay, hey, look, that win over Buffalo is great, but we still have, 8-9 games to play this year. I feel like they're going to be ready for New England. Sauce Gardner is the truth. I mean, that kid is so ridiculously good with how good he is already for a rookie corner that's, only half a season, into his NFL career. You can just tell he's going to be a special player. And I think that's the difference. The Jets defense right now is suffocating teams, absolutely suffocating teams. They have a very good front seven, a very good back four, headlined by Sauce. So I like the Jets here too. I just, unless Tyquan Thornton, wants to break one open, the Patriots don't have any guys that really stretch the field that well. So I feel like the Jets can kind of sit down all day because Gardner can take away options. I mean, he's that good. Dare say it, he might be the next Darrelle Revis, another Jets legend at corner, and ironically finished his career in New England. But I do like the Jets here as well. That leads us to our 5-star matchup of the week. The Cincinnati Bengals are headed to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Cincinnati is a 4.5-point favorite at the moment. We'll give you the first honors here. How do you think this one will go?
I think the Steelers needed how many turnovers? 6 in the first game. I think they got a pick 6. They got 5 or 6 turnovers.
Yeah,
they got
like
like
it was
8
4
sacks.
picks and a fumble.
They knocked out the long snapper and nearly lost that game 3 times late in the game. I know that everybody is like, we beat them in week 1. We're going to beat them again. And first of all, I just think the likelihood of that happening, pulling that rabbit out of a hat twice in a row is going to be hard. So, yeah, I think the Bengals win convincingly. Maybe not, a 20-point win, but a 10-point win, something like that, 10, 13 points. So I guess I'll call it the Steelers usually hit right around that 13 number. So I'll call it 13 plus. How about 26-13 Bengals?
Okay. Corey, how about you, man?
You're almost stealing my thunder on the total number of points. I'm going 27-14 Bengals.
14. That's 2 touchdowns. Are you aware of that?
Feels like a lot.
It's a big ask.
I'm not even joking. I'm kind of expecting either like a pick 6 or like another special teams play to spring us to where we get close, because I don't think we get 2 sustained drives. This is a different team without Jamar Chase, but I still think they're top to bottom a lot better than us. You just don't see the deficiencies and areas for them as you do for us. I'm sure their O-line is going to come out with really something to try and prove, because that's probably the worst O-line performance of the season to this day out of any NFL team this season, of course. So I'm sure they're really going to be playing to not let us embarrass them again. So I think we get one kind of funky touchdown, or we get down close, we're able to punch it in, and then we might be able to sustain one drive. And I think they get an early-ish lead, probably get to 20, middle of the third, and then just start running the ball out in the fourth like they attempted to do last time.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to be the only guy picking Pittsburgh this week. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the blind optimism from this past week, but TJ Watt makes a world of difference. We're a completely different team with him in the game. I think the stats say something like when he plays, we give up 8 less points a game or something like that. And then honestly, with KZ playing well in his first game back, that's a piece we didn't have last time. And then if Fitzpatrick finds a way to play even a quarter of the defensive snaps. You're asking him just to do the bare minimum out there, not even do the full thing. I just like the way our defense has really been playing really the last few weeks. Other than the Philadelphia game, we have found a way to keep offenses down. I mean, we found a way to only let the Dolphins score 17. The defense has kept us in games. I think the offense keeps getting better week in, week out. Like Corey said earlier in the episode, a little more creativity here and there. Maybe the offense
only a little.
I said
Only
a
a little.
little. I didn't say
Just
substantial or anything. But
Again, it's
I'm just high on the optimism right now. And I think honestly, there's a real chance Pittsburgh takes this game and uses it to somehow make that possibility of a 500 record for Mike Tomlin. Just because with how pathetic, the schedule finishes out or whatever.
Will was
Who the
covering
hell
his
knows,
face, and
but-
it's now.
Who the hell knows? But I like Pittsburgh this week. No DJ Reader's a big difference. I don't think he's going to play. I know he practiced Monday for the first time in a long time. I think it's rushing him back if he plays. Mike Hilton will be back for this game too. I don't know. Something just tells me Pittsburgh's going to find a way to win a close game. But I'm thinking it's going to be like 17-13. It's going to be one of those AFC North slugfests that we've become very accustomed to over the years. So I will be the only one taking Pittsburgh to win 2 in a row. I can't believe I said that.
Phew.
Can you explain how they're going to get to 17 points? I'm just curious.
Pat Fryermuth is going to win some matchups against Logan Wilson. I feel like Logan
Wow.
Wilson.
What?
Yeah, I'm just telling you, man. I'm just telling you. I have a feeling. this week.
Have you been drinking? I mean, is there something? Did you have COVID recently? I don't know.
No, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, as they call it.
Nice. Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know.
I'll let you
feeling,
gloat
right?
next week. I'll let you gloat next week if you're right.
Yeah, well, if that'll be the case, I will be the only one gloating. And if I'm wrong, you two can tell me how wrong I really was. So with that being said, thank you guys again for joining us on another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the message boards, joined by Corey Karbowski and Will Massasek. Gentlemen, thank you for another episode here. Dare I say it, but this week I'm going to say, here we go. Instead let's see where we go.
Here we go. Who knows where, but yeah, we're going. With slightly more creativity.
Well, all right. Thank you guys again for tuning into another episode. Have a good week and go Steelers.
Cheers, go Steelers.